I'll go this side and then I'll work around.
This is the longest meeting we've ever had in the history of Toronto and the shortest amount of time we've had available to respond to it and speak. I do want to say, if I actually, so I'm going to try and speak as fast as I can because I'm a very slow speaker, and I'm going to tell you all the motions I would have moved if I'd had enough opportunity and time to move them. And if there was a single person on this committee that had agreed to sponsor my motion, not a single one of them were prepared to do that. I would have asked that our city manager actually consult with the senior managers about the KPMG report. That didn't happen. I would have moved that the Executive Committee request the Mayor to convene a meeting of the Labour Management Steering Committee to discuss the potential efficiencies, because that hasn't happened. I would have moved that the Executive Committee request the City Manager to report at its meeting on the social, environmental, economic, health and equity impacts of the options set out in the KPMG report related to clusters A, B, C and the city agencies, because that didn't happen. And I would have asked the City Manager to defer approval of the voluntary separation packages for employees until the service level decisions are made and we don't exit thousands of people out of this organization until we know what they want to do. And I would have asked the Mayor for an intergovernmental strategy because, of course, we don't have one. And I would have asked that we actually decide on a set of values for the city, which I heard all through this evening, and ask that instead of being mediocre, that the City of Toronto aspire to be the best it can be in everything it does and not accept just being mediocre or at standard, according to KPMG. I actually have more time. I have to learn to speak fast like that all the time.
Councillor,
I'm not finished. I, too, just want to say this has been an absolutely amazing experience. And I want to commend everyone who came here tonight, who spoke with unbelievable passion, who talked about libraries, recreation centers, public health, funding that support all kinds of community agencies. And I do want to say as well that when the Mayor opened his remarks today, he listed a number of services: roads, clean water, clean air, sewers that don't flood basement, beaches safe for swimming, parks ready to play in, garbage centers, ambulance, fire, police, community centers. And then he asked us and the public about what were the nice-to-haves and what were the must-haves. And what I heard tonight was that the people of Toronto said all of those things are must-haves.
Of course.
And we have to find a way to keep them. Thank you.
Next. Councillor Doucette, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Perks and Councillor Davis has basically said everything, but what I would like to add to that, I would like to thank everyone who did come out to speak, partly because you gave us your passion and you told us what you felt, but also to allow the councillors on the Executive Committee who couldn't get out to the core service public reviews, so they've now been able to hear from you directly how you feel. And I think that will help them make decisions here. So once again, I just want to thank you for spending 24 hours with us, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
I have always believed that the values and objectives of any society should always be reflected in budgetary decision making. And we would do the same thing in our households, is that depending on where we want to bring our family or which direction we wanted to go with our own family, based on those social values, we would set the household budget. Whether it's sending the kids to university or perhaps taking the extra vacation to the Caribbean or perhaps making personal sacrifices. We have to lead the city by determining what the social values and the objectives are for our city. And unfortunately, I think that conversation has now come rather late, because this is where the deputations have come in, and that's where we've actually heard the social values of our city being articulated. The KPMG report itself is at best incomplete, and at worst horribly flawed with respect to the fact that the template was so rigid, and it has now been exposed by university researchers and experts, and through our own line of questioning, that we have now determined that there is major gaps in that report. And I think that we now have to take a look at the report, not as a complete picture, is that it is only one of many moving parts as we move towards balancing our budget. And I think we need to really keep that in mind and not move towards just making decisions based on political ideology or dogma. The KPMG opportunities, as they've described them as, to be unlocked are going to possibly devastate working and middle-class families in Toronto. Daycares, libraries, student nutrition, long-term care, somehow they've been identified as opportunities that we can outsource, privatize, monetize. I don't understand that. Arts, culture, heritage, all these things have been economic generators of wealth in our city, and again now they're on the chopping blocks. Once again, I have to ask, is that the direction that we want our city to go in? With respect to the CPIP grants, or city-funded, community-based organization that we purchase services from, who are our community partners on the ground, I think that lives will be lost or saved based on the decisions of the Executive Committee tonight or the Council in September. AIDS prevention, drug prevention strategies, community safety, Toronto public health, these are essential services, my friends. These are not nice-to-haves, they are must-haves. And finally, you know, through KPMG's own report, what they've said, outlined in this report, is that we need to go through a more extensive business case review, which they said that in the absence of making any decisions on this report only, without the business case review, is that it will be erroneous. And finally, I just want to end with, please, Mr. Mayor, it's been a long night. I just want to end this, end with this.
Councillor Wong-Tam, 3 minutes, as we've been holding the line all day. We're not going to change now, okay? So, all right. Councillor Layton, three minutes. Councillor Layton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, like my colleague, Councillor Davis, was hoping that I might be able to move a similar motion that we've tried to move in several committees because of the glaring shortcomings and the incompleteness of the KPMG reports. The motion would read that the city manager comment in his report to the Executive Committee on September 19th, 2011 on service level impacts of implementing each of the opportunities listed in Appendix A, Part 2 of the KPMG Standing Committee Summary for the Executive Committee. I've tried my best to remain objective as we look at some of the most surprising proposals for cuts that probably this council has ever seen. Now, but with that, it's left me with so many questions, and I think it's left a lot of my colleagues with questions about what the impacts of some of these cuts will be, because as KPMG has repeatedly answered to questions, it wasn't part of their mandate, or they don't know, it was outside of their scope. They didn't have the time to complete the report. Well, that kind of means we're basing our decisions here on an incomplete set of data. There are just too many questions for us to ask of staff in the 2 minutes that we're going to be able, we were provided today, and I don't think they'd even be able to answer them, because it takes more time and consideration to look through what actually the impacts of these recommendations, these opportunities will be on actual services that we deliver as a city on the ground. It takes more than just coming up with a wild idea about what you can do before we can make a decision on whether or not we're going to subject our residents, our taxpayers, our city to these outrageous cuts. We shouldn't be making such important decisions on incomplete sets of data that deal directly with our city services. So I'm not going to hold my breath. I've asked a couple councillors. It's clear that there's a specific set of recommendations coming out of the meeting. I'm really hoping that one of them include us getting a better picture on what these proposals mean to actual services being delivered to our citizens, to our residents, to our taxpayers, so we know whether or not these are the major service cuts or even moderate service cuts, and how our residents are going to feel them. So I'm hoping that we can all see that there are holes in what KPMG has here that we need answers to before we make any decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Okay, on the side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
I,
Packard.
too, would like to add my thanks to the list of others that have thanked the hundreds of Torontonians that have been with us for almost 24 hours in this marathon of deputations. And I think it's absolutely amazing that we've had people come out and depute in short stories, poems, a puppet show to tell us the kind of city that they'd like to live in. I'm amazed by this core service review and the reports that we have in front of us. The report talks about selling lucrative assets like the TPA, closing library branches, scrapping a gem like the Toronto Atmospheric Fund, cutting bus services when they are the most needed for public safety, and a litany of other options. Excuse me. KPMG has insisted that these are not recommendations but rather options. And how could they be recommendations since KPMG has pointed out again and again that considering the implications of their options was in fact beyond the scope of their study? How can you make decisions without considering their implications? I also have some concerns about what was not in this report. The community's feedback is not integrated into KPMG's report. We have heard it said that the taxpayers will decide, but almost 13,000 Torontonians participated in the Core Service Review survey, and yet some say they are not the right 13,000. Hundreds more have come to make deputations, as I said, at the special meetings of the city's standing committees over the last couple of weeks. And again, some suggest that they're not the right Torontonians. By not listening to those Torontonians who have chosen to speak to us, we're doing this city a great disservice and undermining the legitimacy of our decision. The Toronto Star has also raised some concerns about this report. They quote an expert in strategic management at York University's Schulich School of Business, quote, "There is no way a city as complex as Toronto, with a budget in the billions of dollars, with so many departments, could be reviewed with $3 million. This was not an economic decision, it was a political one," end of quote. Let me be clear. I do not want to cast any aspersions on KPMG. I do not want to go down the road that has led to people casting aspersions on Tim Hortons, a fine Canadian company, Margaret Atwood, a brilliant Canadian writer. What I want to do is to listen to the residents of my ward, and the residents of my ward at Core Service Review consultations and in emails and phone calls to my office have been very consistent in saying they want to protect city services so as to help those in need and to invest in the future prosperity of Toronto.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Vaughn, you're the last visiting councillor, so. Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, sorry. You're still waiting, okay. Councillor Phil.